welcome to yet another episode of Sitecore Tech Talks. Today we have Nelson with us. Nelson is having 16 years of industry experience and since last 12 years he is working on Sitecore. Nelson is working as a solution architect at Horizontal, and today we are going to chit chat about basics of XM Cloud. So welcome Nelson to the show.
Thanks for the introduction, Alok.
Yeah,
Nice to be here.
Our pleasure. So Nelson, let's start with the basic question. What is XM Cloud, Sitecore Cloud Portal, and its uses?
Okay. So Sitecore has three different groups. Okay, one is Commerce Cloud, Content Cloud, and Engagement Cloud. Okay, so basically this XM Cloud comes into the Content Cloud environment. Okay, so basically we have used with the XCP Sitecore XP environment, right? Which is where we have used monolithic CMS where all the maintenance happens in the local infrastructure. Like we need to maintain the infrastructure and all kind of activities we need to do. So here, this kind of environment, like everything Sitecore will be handled. Like it's a common monolithic. It's not a monolithic CMS. It's a unified environment for omni-channel experience, which helps the content authors, developers, even creative peoples, DevOps peoples. It makes their life easier, so we can easily create a website and deploy the websites easily. We no need to worry about anything here. Also, it has a lot of products available internally. Like for example, in order to edit the content, right? In olden monolithic CMS, we have only experience editor and content editor, right? So we have a lot of issues with the experience editor. But with respect to this one, we have Sitecore pages and Explorer. So these are the two new components which are introduced by Sitecore to do the content editing, okay? Which is very easy. Like if it looks similar to experience editor, where in the Sitecore pages we can directly edit the pages on the fly if the performance is too good, and that is also used for you to do personalization as well. So you can create the page level variants using Sitecore pages, and you can track the analytics, like how many people visited the pages, and you can track those details. As well as the Explorer is also a similar way of content thing, where instead of viewing like a full page, you can directly looks like a content editor where you can directly edit the page fields, something like that, right? Okay. So this is purely about these two components. In terms of XM Cloud, right? So basically, we have different terminologies like content management server, rendering host, like experience edge. So these are some of the things like we will be having. So we'll talk about individually, like now this one. So content management server is basically like it's basically CM. So where content author used to author all the contents and which will be published and everything, right? So in the classical way, we will be using different types of renderings, right? Now we are using like a JSON rendering, so which will be used to expose our content globally, so anyone from the world can able to access it with the help of layout service response. Purely it will be a JSON response basically, right? So how we going to expose this data to the outside world, right? So basically, we don't have a content delivery server here. We only having content management server here. So that means like we can ask a question like how can we publish the content, right? We don't have how can there is a workflow will be there, or we don't know, right? So that's where this experience edge comes into picture. So experience edge is again like it's a kind of a CDN where it's running behind the scene using Elasticsearch. Okay, so we will be publishing all our Sitecore related content to the experience edge. So by default, when you installing this XM Cloud, by default, we actually having XM Cloud having the experience edge tenant, and it also provides XM edge connector. So we need to create the publishing target by default, right? By default, it will out of the box it will come, but in case if it is not available, we can create our publishing target. Okay. So that using that publishing target, we can publish our content to the experience edge. From there, we can able to access that content, all the media libraries, everything through the different channels and everywhere. Okay, this is something like how this thing. Again, with respect to rendering host, right? So rendering host is something like we don't have a content delivery instance, right? So rendering host is something like we need to create a different application, like out of the box using a starter kit, which is provided by XM Cloud. They will be using a Next.js application, which is a Docker container. We can use the Docker container to up that environment. If you are using a Sitecore first approach, okay, so you can run as a Docker container. Using that approach, like you can install in your local and you can easily communicate with that one. So that application will become as your website, okay. and the content will be coming from your XM Cloud.
Right.
But in case like if you are a front-end developer, right, you don't want to use a Sitecore full thing in your local itself, right? So in that case, like you still use the this starter kit application, but without need to install the Docker instance. You don't want a Sitecore instance in your local. So that way you can still communicate with Sitecore and access all the content, everything, and you can create the templates. All the resources from the front-end team can create everything from there, and they can push it to Sitecore. So there doesn't need any Sitecore developer to be there to create templates and images and everything for them. So everything can be happen from the JSS, the app itself. So we used to call this called as a headless application. So Sitecore is provided the JSS SDK for this one to handle this scenario. Okay, so now we have discussed about rendering host, right? So there is one more thing which is called editing host. Okay, what do you mean by editing host? Is something like, as I told, rendering host is for the is a different application. If say for an example, in previously we have experience editor, right? We will be editing on the fly some of the content, right? That will have like images and all the pages, right? But here XM Cloud is different and rendering host is different, right? There is no connection between these two things, right? So in that case, like in order to make sure, like if you want to edit something, right? So out of the box, like if you do a deployment to XM Cloud, only in the XM Cloud CM environment, whatever you're editing, that is called editing host. Okay, so on the fly. But you can say, for an example, you're deploying your application to some different cloud like Vercel or somewhere, right? So that is called rendering host. But you can still use that rendering host as an editing host as well. But out of the box, we will be having editing host by default. Like whatever the deployment happens. So basically, we need to do two deployments. One is for XM Cloud, one is for Vercel deployment or somewhere. So whatever the deployment happens to that CM, which is XM Cloud, that we can directly edit the content, everything, which is called editing host. So we can on the fly, we can edit and all those, we can see that content over there.
So what are the different development workflows?
Yeah, as I just told, like basically, like we have like a Sitecore first and code first approach, right? So in Sitecore first approach, like we will be having a .NET JSS SDK, which we will be using in our with help of Docker, Windows Docker, and we install that one in our local environment. So where the Sitecore people can create the templates and everything. And they can push the data from your local instance to that the Sitecore instance. Okay, but again, similar to this one, like if you're non-Sitecore people, right? They can still use the same application, but without need of the Sitecore installed in your local. Okay, they can still communicate with that one.
Right. So now, how to get started with XM Cloud setup?
Okay, so first of all, in order to get started with XM Cloud, your organization, your company or your organization has to send you an invite, okay, to you. So basically, like an organization has subscribed to some product, which is Sitecore product, okay. So so I can tell you, like we have different variables like that, like organization, project, and environments. Okay, these are all three main areas where all this access will come into picture. Okay, first is organization. Organization, as I told you, it's the kind of a company. It owns like many different kind of Sitecore products. Okay, so organization may have one product. Say for example, if as a user, okay, I can have subscription to many organizations. Okay. So say you are working with different clients, right? Each and every client will have their own Sitecore XM Cloud instance, right? So they will have different companies together, right? So but they also have the different products, also. Like say for example, XM Cloud product, they will have personalization product, will they have CDP product, will they have, right? So this is a common cloud portal. Will have all the things comes under one organization. Okay. So so you can able to switch it if you want. You can switch to the different organization and you can access your products. Okay, so now we have an organization. So you say for example, you selected XM Cloud as your main product, main app. Now we went to the app, right? Now basically now we only have the organization. We doesn't have any Sitecore instance over there, right? In order to create a Sitecore instance, first we need to create a project. So first we will be creating the project. So project is again a logical grouping of all the environments. Like basically, like there will be one project. Example, say for an example, you are building a website, right? Any website. So it will be a one project for you, right? Another project you will be having a different environment like production, staging, development, UAT, whatever we call, right? Different environments. Okay, so we need to create those environments. Okay, project is a collection of multiple environments. Okay, and environment, again, there is some restriction. So based on our license policy, we'll be having we can able to create different number of environments, right? I think basically we'll be having, as of now, most of the clients having 3 environments, like production, staging, and development. But depends upon your subscription, they will be allowing you more. So that's something we need to talk to the Sitecore salesperson. So they will be allowing us to create more environments. Okay. So once we created the environment, right? So in the environment we have separate different options. Like say for an example, how we want the environment to get populated with the content, the code deployed. Okay, so basically, like if you are using GitHub or some different repository, right? As out of the box, I am talking. Out of the box, we have a tight integration with the Git. So if there is any commit happens to the Git, right, automatically deployment will trigger when we trigger the environment. So we have the settings, right? So that can be done. So we can make we have an option to make this a development environment, this a production environment. That kind of a labeling also we can set. So based on that, Sitecore will provide like more SLAs on top of that one, right? So if it is a production environment, Sitecore will provide more SLAs. So something like that. So again, environment level, we have multiple options. Like say for an example, we have any deployment happened, right? So as some GitHub, we deployed some code. So through that environment, we can individually monitor like what deployment happened, something like that. So these are all the things about how we're gonna do the deployment or something.
Okay. So now setup is done. Okay.
Yeah.
So now what are the different tools available for content authoring?
Yeah. So again, content authoring, like we have Sitecore pages, content editor, experience editor, and explorer, right? So the recent introduction is Sitecore pages and explorer. Okay, but most of the people nowadays are using Sitecore pages. As I initially told, like it is more flexible, and we can able to use it for personalization. So okay, again in terms of personalization, right? In the old way, like we used to do component level personalization, right? But here with the help of Sitecore pages, we can do the page level personalization itself, right? So if you have a page like 10 components, right? Okay, but I want only one component to be personalized. Okay, it is not possible. You need to personalize the entire page only. But you have an option whether you among the 10 components you can only personalize one component only. Rest of the 9 components you can still ignore it. But the personalization based on the page only. So that kind of option is coming. Again, by Sitecore is actually using like a lightweight of CDP personalized, Sitecore personalized. Okay. With respect to the Sitecore personalized, with respect to Sitecore pages, okay, we can still see what you do, something like that. So we can still edit everything in there, and we can schedule our deployment also. Say for an example, we have some marketing event or something. I want some pages to be deployed maybe 1 week from now, right? And I want to be removed it after the event has been completed. Okay, we can schedule that kind of thing in Sitecore pages. Okay, so we schedule it. After the time comes, it will deploy automatically, and it will revoke it automatically to the old thing. So such kind of a feature we can use with Sitecore pages as well, apart from personalization. Okay. One more thing is like once we done personalization with Sitecore pages, right? So after that, we need to see what are all the things, what are the analytics perspective, right? So how many pages hits, how many visitor came to this particular pages, okay? That we can still drill down, like we can drill down to site level personalization as well as site level analytics as well as page level analytics, right? So the entire website, how many, we can track all the pages, all the histories about the entire thing of the site. We can drill down to the individual pages as well. So we have 2 options. Most probably this result will be for last 7 days. We can see only for the last 7 days. So we can't see more than that. Okay. So this is something related to Sitecore pages. Explorers, as I told, with respect to Explorer, right, we similar like that one, but here you can't see the page. Basically, you can't see the entire UX UI, but you can see the similar like content editor. We can see the fields and everything where you can edit the fields. But there is one difference between content editor and here, which is like if you're having a tree list or multi-list here, you can't do that here because you don't have that option here. But you can put a GUID over there. Okay. Say for an example, I need to select a multi-list, right? You need to manually know that value, the raw value, and you need to manually place it in that. So that way, but still it supports all the functionality. That way it will be useful. And here there is one capability version. There is the versioning available. So like content editor, we are also having the versioning. We need to open the versioning and we can see that one, right? Here there is a separate tab for versioning where it will clearly mention all the versioning histories and everything. We can make sure we can make some version to be push it to production or something. We can edit something, which is very easy in the Explorer. So apart from the content editor, these are some of the options which is available here.
Okay, so now I filled the content and all. Okay, now how can I publish the content, okay, so that I can access it across different omni channels?
Yes, so as I initially told, in terms of terminologies, right, we have Experience Edge, right? Experience Edge is a CDN, global CDN, which is throughout the world, right? So in order to publish the content, like XM Cloud is already having the XM Edge connector, Experience Edge connector. Okay, using the Experience Edge connector, it will communicate with this Experience Edge. Okay, so in order to do that, we already having this publishing target has been set up. Okay, so once we have this set up, we can directly publish this one, and that will take you to that Experience Edge. Okay, once, say for an example, now you have your mobile devices. Okay, mobile devices will not have a Sitecore instance installed, or it doesn't have a .NET application installed. So it will be like a JSON API request or something, right? So they need to access your content. Okay, it's not a layout service response basically, like your Next.js application will use layout service response. But here it's just an API basically. So what we are doing, we are using GraphQL APIs, okay, to access your content from the Sitecore layout service. Okay, so say for an example, I need to access one item from Sitecore which is having all kind of presentation details. Okay, so it has a lot of components and everything available. So we still able to access the layout service through GraphQL. In order to get this communication channel properly, we need to create a token first of all. That is the main thing in order to do the communication between your mobile devices or any devices to Sitecore, Sitecore or Experience Edge channel. Okay, so in order to do that, once you go to the cloud portal, we will see there is 3 tabs available. There is a site tools and settings tab will be available. On the site tabs, you can see there is a 3 dot available. Click on that one. You can go to settings, and if you see like you can see there is an option to create a generate token, edge token. Okay, use that token and use that token in your application using your any kind of language, programming language. Use that token. And your API, they also providing a REST API endpoint for this edge. So use that edge endpoint, and you can create your GraphQL query to query from the Experience Edge. Okay, this is one way of getting the data from Experience Edge, and we can use it in different mobile devices. Okay, so the second way of getting the content is like from XM Cloud. Like we just talked about like the published content, right? So in case like I'm doing some kind of a development internally, locally or somewhere, right? My content is not published yet, but that is still available in Sitecore. Okay, but it is not like I'm not deployed that into production or somewhere, but it's still in Sitecore. But still I have possibility to push it to Experience Edge as well, right? So in that case, like I can still use my preview endpoint. Okay, which is basically like you no need to get it directly from Experience Edge. You can directly access from Sitecore itself, CM itself, through GraphQL. Okay, so you can still access your data from GraphQL, and you can still play with your development activity. Even if you are a mobile developer or someone, right, you can still access the content from there, and you can able to continue your work without any problem. So once you done with all your validation and everything, once you publishing it to production, or if publishing to Experience Edge, you can able to use the actual Experience Edge content. Your code will not be changed, because only the endpoint will get changed. Rest of the code will never gonna get changed, because your GraphQL query will be still the same. Only the endpoint is the same, different. Previously you used Edge endpoint. Now you're gonna use the preview endpoint, but still your functionality remains the same.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how we will be trying to get content here.
Okay. So with XM Cloud, Webbook is also kind of hot topic.
Yeah. So
how to configure a Webbook?
Yeah. First of all, like Webbook. What is Webbook? Okay. So if something is happening in Sitecore, right? Any action is happening in Sitecore, that has to be notified. Okay. In the old monolithic CMS, we have content delivery instance, right? So we have like an event queue, and when something is available there. So any event is happened, like there is a database entry, so the CD server is trying to look for it, and it try to get the data, and it'll do the processing. but here we don't have a CD server. So we don't know like what's happening in the XM cloud. So like say for an example, I having some data to be indexed, right? Now out of the box we don't have any indexing option, right? So we need to go for some third party, either Sitecore search or some other third party. But most probably we will prefer Sitecore search, right? Still, even though say for an example, like I want some of the data to be monitored or something to be pushed to different APIs. Say for an example, not searching, right? I want to push this data to some third party API system, okay? So I need to do some kind of a logic to get the data from out of Sitecore. So this is where Sitecore introduced the concept called Webbook, so which will give us a lot of options like it. So basically different kinds of events, we can configure different kinds of events like publishing event, item save event, item end event, any event we can configure to any event. If this action happens in the XM Cloud CM environment, this API endpoint will be triggered along with the data. Okay, that data will be posted to that endpoint which we configured, and the end system can access the data and it will process accordingly. So this webbook is not only for events, right? This webbook is also for workflows. Say for an example, you actually need to do some validation action. Okay, you want to trigger some workflow on the top of validation action. Also, you say for an example, from one state to another state if you are going, so you want to trigger a webbook. So we have a lot of options to do that. Okay, so you can grab the data and you can process it accordingly. You can use this data to indexing. So all kind of things can be happened using this one. So either it can be a GET request, most probably it will be a POST request. It can be either XML or JSON as your body. So that we can configure it. Authentication also we can configure. Say for an example, like if your endpoint basically, right? Your endpoint looking for some kind of an authentication, right? You can use that authentication here. There's an option we can create it in Sitecore X, and we can create those authentication properties in that. Based on that, you can able to communicate with your third party endpoint.
All these things are done. Now let's talk about deployment. Okay, so how to configure a deployment in XM Cloud?
Okay, deployment. So in XM Cloud, like there is a different option for doing the deployment. Okay, so like we actually having a portal called Sitecore Deploy Portal, which is exclusively used for this deployment option. Where this is the place where we actually configuring our projects, environments, and everything. So which we discussed before, right? So this is the place we are actually configuring these details, as well as we have CLI. Okay, so again with the help of CLI also we can able to do this similar kind of deployment. There is one more option which is REST API. Okay, Sitecore out of the box, like they given all the Swagger details for us, like with proper documentation. Like using that one also we can able to do the deployment options. Okay, so in order to do this deployment option, we need to do pre-setup. Say for an example, if you are using GitHub, okay, Git as your repository, right? See, this is out of the box. Sitecore provided an option to do this very easily. Okay. And if your cloud hosting provider is Vercel, in that case, it is very easy. Say for an example, I want to do a deployment to Azure, and I don't have GitHub repository. I am using Azure DevOps. Okay, so in that case, like it's not that easy. Like you need to write some pipelines for PowerShell script to do that. Okay, but if you are using GitHub with Vercel, it is very easy. It's just like that clicks you can easily configure using Deploy Portal. Okay, so basically in respect to Deploy Portal, first we need to create a GitHub connection. Okay, so basically in the cloud deployment portal we have the connection traps where we can have like where you're gonna connect, which like we are gonna to connect to GitHub. So you can authenticate with the GitHub repository. For end of the day, you will be getting the connection. Okay, once you have validated everything with your credentials and everything, you can have the connection is created in the GitHub. So once this connection is created, okay, now you can create your hosting environment. Say for an example, Vercel, right? If you have all the authentication details with Vercel, you can create your details and you can create that. Okay, once this is created successfully, say for an example, now I want to create actually environment, right? So basically your deployment will happen on the environments. Environment is where your all Sitecore instances will be available. So like production environment, you will be, say for example, if your environment is production, right? That's where you need to have a Sitecore instance, right? That is Sitecore instance only serving your content and everything. So environment is just a collection of all these instances. Okay, so now I created the environment where I can configure like whether I need to do the deployment automatically on commit in the GitHub or something we can able to configure. Yes, exactly. So and also I can able to link the repository which I just created. Okay, so I created a repository, right? So I can link the repository. I can do the deployment later. Okay, say for an example, I done all the configuration and I did the deployment. Later point of time, I come to know, okay, I need to switch the deployment to a different branch from the same GitHub, right? So I can still do that. Okay, so I have an option to do. I can change this branch from one to another. So which is also possible here. Okay, once I did the deployment, okay, we can still see all the logs, which is again go to the, there is a cloud deployment portal, right? We have the project option, go to project environments. Under environments, you can select which environment you are using, deploying. Say for an example, you are doing the deployment for a development environment, right? Click on development, you can see all the logs which is created. Like any deployments happen, everything is logged there. Okay, you can still go there and see the deployment, what has happened there. With the help of that, we can analyze if there is any issues. We can download the log also as possible, which is possible. Okay, in later, okay, so you think like I done the deployment properly in development environment, right? So is it possible? Shall I promote the same thing to production? Which is also possible, right? We can just, there is an option which we can promote one environment to another environment deployment. So such option also available there. Okay, so right now think an example like I using Azure DevOps, right? So mostly Azure DevOps using pipelines way of doing the deployment, right? So I do the deployment using continuous integration like CI/CD pipeline. Okay, I did the deployment. Now I think of doing the deployment directly in the cloud portal. Okay, so if all the configurations are created there, I can trigger the deployment on the spot in the deployment portal itself. Okay, because the code is already there, because the package, everything, the pipeline is already put there, and they already did the deployment. So I can re-trigger the deployment on the portal itself instead of going with Azure DevOps directly. So that is also a possibility here.
So that's pretty much about XM Cloud, and I can say basics of XM Cloud from setting up to the deployment.
Yeah.
So thank you, Nelson. Thank you for sharing the information.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, guys. I would also like to thank Varun Shungapure and Harsh Mithapara, who is right now behind the camera. So see you in the next episode. Cheers.
Thank you.